Today we will tackle this frame.
Back on the 60 series. I'm telling you, it has for sure seen better days.
The frame could break or you rip out the hanger.
There is no stability in here.
And probably better welds.
The rear cross member looks disgusting. I mean, a 4-year-old kid could have done this.
So ladies and gentlemen, it's time to fix it.
First of all, we will make a jig. What is a jig? A jig is more or less a frame who holds the actual frame in place when I cut out the inner C profiles and also weld new ones in and repair the rest of the frame. So when I weld it, I put heat and stress into the metal, and without a jig there is a high possibility that the frame will bend somehow in some direction. Now we will start with the jig.
In order to start with the jig, I have to prepare everything. Good thing is I have a lot of spare metal laying around. As soon as the jig is in place, we don't have problems afterwards with a warped frame. Oops, I almost dropped it. When you weld a frame so extensive, there is always the possibility it will warp because you put so much heat into the metal. And then when you put the car together, you are more or less because nothing fits.
I built the first tube and I built it, as wide as the frame is, and because I welded it, it shrinked a little bit. So I have to press it apart probably a millimeter or two and then get the frame in. And what I have to do now is to make something iron bar, or a metal bar actually, I can put in there, put a jack in there, so I can press it a little bit apart so I can get the frame in. And afterwards we will tack weld the frame to the U.
I'm taking measurements with the jack in between the two stands to know how long that metal bar should be. Then I am marking the center where the strut will be sitting. Only thing left is welding everything together and checking if everything sits in a 90-degree angle. Then it was time to fit it, but there was a problem with that, but see it yourself.
The jack is actually too short. I have a hydraulic press, or a hydraulic ram actually, but I gave it to a friend and never got it back until now. So I had to build something, and because the jack just works up, I have to do it on the floor, measure it, measure the frame, then get it up, release the jack, and then the frame is actually clamped.
Said and done. After positioning everything, the frame was finished. And look at this beauty! The only thing I have to do now is getting it under the frame and then finished.
As you see, the frame is in the jig, or in the half of the jig. What we will do now is, before I release the hydraulic jack, I will build the front U, then look that the frame is straight with the jig, and afterwards when I release the jack, and before I tack weld the frame, I will adjust it so it's completely straight in the jig, and I can take measurements afterwards and all that I can measure in between when I cut stuff out and weld stuff in, if he is still straight, so I have points that are always the same. And that's what we do now.
For the front jig, I have to check the frame up, so we are somehow level, and then it's time to measure everything, because it needs to be accurate, at least somehow. Afterwards I have to grind 3 spots, where we'll weld the jig to the frame, measuring everything to get the right height for the jig, and off we go. After that I have to level the frame out with the trusty Toyota jack stands.
I cut off 2 pieces. I will weld on here a plate. In the meantime I put 2 jack stands on the frame so I could level it out. Afterwards, when I welded this on this and made 2 pieces, I will put it on left and right. Measure from a point where I know that are similar left and right. In this case this holes exist on the other side too, and from the measurements it's the same. Then I will straighten the bar out and then weld it on. And afterwards we will put 2 other iron squares underneath it, connect the rear with the front, and then tack weld the frame onto the jig. And that's it.
There was only one thing left to do, welding everything together.
So now I get the upper parts into position before I tack weld it to the iron square underneath. Measure everything so they are on the same position on the frame rails. When I tacked everything, I will get 2 metal squares underneath, and then we are actually finished with the jig and can start to cut apart the frame.
Everything is said and done, but just our important information before we go on.
When I weld a jig or something like a jig, I always take care that everything is, let's say, the same measurements left and right, and everything is an angle, because afterwards these 4 posts will be my reference points for the frame, and when your reference points are off by, they will be off by 1 or 2 millimeters. That's because it is welded and not bolted, and when you weld something, the weld cools off and then it pulls in one direction. So it will be off by 1 or 2 millimeters, but I took care that it is not too much. So it is for me much easier to measure everything. I don't assume it will wrap by a lot, the Land Cruiser frame, but it could be. To avoid this, we made this jig. I welded a lot of frames without a jig and everything went well. But you never know, there are such big holes in these frames, or at least in this one, that I feel much safer with a jig, and that's why we made this. Now we will finish the jig and then we will start to get on the frame.
Anything vergessen?
Yep, I forgot a clamp. Now we are attaching the line everything. Therefore I have to check up the frame so we are level with everything. But of course, measurement is needed in order to be safe. It took a few tries to align everything, but of course...
You didn't see nothing.
Just a joke. After measuring everything,
There's a seam.
we are pretty much set and done.
First, after aligning everything, I measured every point. Frame sits straight in there. Frame seems to be straight. I will now tack weld the squares to the frame. Afterwards, start with tack welding the front posts. Then I will release the jack and tack weld the rear, and we should be good.
With aligning everything, the tack welding begins. The reason I just tack weld everything is, if we need to adjust something, we still can, without cutting everything open, and also the frame won't warp in a direction. When I finished the tack welds, I was in for a surprise.
Da kann ich nicht damit meißen. Das ist... Da komme ich nicht damit so, wie bei der was so drüber geschweißt haben, die Hand, Alter.
Da ist er geworfen auf jeden Fall.
Nothing I hoped for, heavily welded and also bond on the frame, but there is a solution.
If it is a Toyota and you're into Toyotas, it's pretty easy to get the workshop manual. There you have every measuring point Toyota wants. Toyota does use the body brackets as measuring points. In this case, where the body points rusted out and it's pretty hard, so I took my own measurings on the frame rail, how much they are apart, and used also, and that's why I said the jig should be straight. I used certain edges on the jig as reference. And now we will start to cut out the inner C-channels on the right side, because the left side is messed up pretty bad, and we will see how far we can get, if I can get the shock tube out. So let's start it.
Just a disclaimer, if the frame wouldn't be so heavily welded, we would start with removing everything first from the frame, but due to the attachment being welded solid with the frame, we had to switch plans. But now it's time to cut the frame apart. Time to open the mystery box, and we will see which surprise we will get. Probably rust.
I would say somebody already welded that. Yeah, and this is how it looks in a Toyota frame when you cut them apart. The down layer, so the bent piece, is still strong. This one, the straight one, is not a problem to repair. So if someone says just weld the hole, This is how it actually looks in most of them. At least the straight pieces are not really a problem to cut out and put again in. I don't see why you shouldn't. Oh, and it is probably now a geologic thing, because that's dirt from everywhere around Europe. Look at this. That's the evolution of iron. Get serious again. Oh, and that's why I said I probably will cut them from behind the bolts, because you see that it's just rusted much easier that way. And that's why you need a frame check, because afterwards the frame will just be soft. Lots of cutting now, but it will be worth it. And if someone thought the C-channels are bigger than the ones, they are actually not. They are just a little bit. It's just a strengthening piece. And what you see here and here, when they welded it together, there is another, let's say, tiny C-channel in there, and they welded from the outside. So you just have to cut the weld here and here, get a bit of the disc in between. Easy peasy. I mean, it's not that easy peasy, but it is not a Saturn V rocket, so it is possible to repair all this stuff. So, let's go.
After the right side, it was time to open the left side, which was way more heavily welded. Maybe 2 or 3 cutting discs were hurt during this process. The channel is sitting on tight, but nothing a screwdriver wouldn't fix, and I have to say,
So, that's bullshit repair 1+1.
it definitely is. The frame has definitely seen better days. I mean, look at this thing. But there is also a positive side to it.
So, actually the frame is rusted exactly to around here. So, here. Then looks very good. I already also see original paint in there, so it's clearly just, as on all these end cruisers, the rear section of the C-channel. And also on this side, there is plenty of material in the bottom left. So, just have to replace this. What is kinda, I will not say easy, but manageable for most people.
But the amount of rust and dirt is crazy. I'm pretty sure when it was first restored, they didn't clean out the frame at all. I mean, look at how they welded it. They didn't give a
Actually, I wanted to preserve the shock tube pipe thingy, but I looked into it and I saw someone already put Bondo in it and some sealant. So it had a hole before and they put Bondo over it like everywhere on this frame. So I will just cut it out and put a new one in. It saves me a lot of time by just cutting it and put a new one in. Before I wanted to cut it open here and here, all the welds like I did on the C-channels to preserve it, but yeah, I don't have to preserve it because I have to make a new one. Makes it easier.
Luckily, the frame is in a better shape than I thought, and it is time to remove the next thing.
I would say the pipe was very thin. Oh, look at this. I found some Bondo. Something entirely new in this car.
As I mentioned, we cut the shock tube because there is no sense of keeping it. Also here were some discoveries made.
Es wird ein massives Stück, was ich da einschweiß. Bis da offen, von da weg. Bevor ich das rausschneide, muss ich den Rahmen komplett X-mäßig verstreben. Da oben schweißen, so hinten ein X reinmachen.
What I mean here is, due to removing all the strengthening pieces, I need to make sure that the frame will not twist. Therefore, I need to weld in a X-frame in order to prevent that. The next thing on the list is to cut out the remaining rest of the channel. Then we have a full overview on the rear part of the frame.
This was it with another episode of Wrenching. We see us the next time. If you liked the episode, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, follow us on our social media, and we see us the next time.